Hi everyone, my name's Hannah and this is a little webcast all about choosing the right pet care for you. There are lots of different pet care services nowadays. When I first started, there was hardly any around this area. Nowadays we're really spoilt for choice. So whether it's dog walkers or doggy daycare that you're looking to send your dog to, this webcast is designed to help you ask some key questions of those individuals that you will be speaking with to make sure you're getting the most out of them to understand if they're the right service for you and your pet, because every animal is different. Some dogs would be great at daycare and other dogs may not thrive so well in that sort of situation. So the sort of questions that I would ask are applicable to both a dog walker and a daycare. And the first one will be the sort of methodology that those professionals use. So what I'm talking about is whether they use reward-based training and they subscribe to that way of working, or whether they use equipment, be it citronella sprays, check chains, choke collars, and so on, because what we do know from numerous studies over the years is that the reward-based training methods have create quicker and more reliable responses when we're training our dog, and they make for a sort of a more well-balanced individual. Whereas punishment-based training can actually create more fear. It's been shown to actually, in most cases, create more aggression. So we want to make sure that whoever is looking after our animal is working in a way that is best for our own dog's welfare and needs. So really understanding how they work is key, whether it's a dog walker or a daycare. I would also ask what is their practical experience. So they may have had their own dogs for many years, but have they actually undergone any formal training? And that's whether it comes down to a training course about how to train the dog, whether it's a first aid course so they understand what to do in the event of emergency, be it out on a walk or whether it's at their daycare facility. And also what's the training that any of their people that they hire or they employ, because you want to make sure that if you're not having the person that you've interviewed looking after your dog, what is the level of training and experience that those individuals that will be caring for your dog have had. You want to find out what sort of enrichment the dog will get when out on a walk or at daycare. So certainly if it was at daycare, I would expect to see a daycare have some sort of timetable where they could show owners exactly on a day-to-day basis what the dogs do. This is really important because I consult for a number of businesses, whether it's daycares that are starting up or professional dog walkers. And something that we really need to take seriously is enrichment, because if a dog is bored or understimulated, then it can get themselves into a pickle, and that's where potentially spats can happen. Equally, if a daycare is not having significant time for dogs to rest, so that can cause a problem as well. And I've dealt with cases where dogs have actually been so overstimulated in the activities that they do at daycare and then with their mum and dad in their own time, the dog has very little time to rest, and this can be equally stressful and cause for a shorter fuse and therefore some behavioural problems. So good daycare should have the dogs resting for at least 50% of the time they're at daycare. So in terms of enrichment, if it's not just walks, I'm talking about whether there's equipment at the daycare that they can interact with, whether the dog walker asks you whether your own dog has, say, food puzzle toys and things that can be left for the dog to interact with if he's at your home and you're not going to be there for a wee while. So make sure you ask about that. I would also ask whether both your dog walker or the daycare has protocols for things like dog fights. Many people that I speak to don't have actual procedures. And if they do have a procedure for a dog fight, so this is a document that lists what exactly happens in that situation, do they rehearse? Because it's all very well having it written down, but in the heat of the moment when something kicks off, do those individuals that are working with the dogs actually follow that due process? So, in that instance, they may say, well, we do use a citronella spray or water spray to break up a fight, or we have a fight shield and so on. So you want to find out about that. And indeed, what happens out on the walk as well, if a fight was to break out, how would they handle it? You want to find out how many people are on site at any one time at the daycare, and how many dogs are going to be there at any one time. And if it's a dog walker, how many dogs are walked out altogether, and how many people are walking with those dogs. I would be really concerned if there was a ratio of one person to more than 3 dogs out on a walk. This industry isn't regulated, so anyone can set themselves up as a trainer or a daycare or a professional dog walker. Nevertheless, it's my personal opinion that if you've got well-managed, well-trained dogs, that even more than 3 dogs for one individual is a big ask when you're out and about on a walk. I would certainly expect there to be a ratio at least 1 to 3, 1 to 4 dogs in a daycare. So there should be at least, where there's 8 dogs, there should be at least 2 individuals supervising at any one time. What happens when the dogs aren't supervised during the day is a question that you should ask. So, we all need to go to the loo at some point or take a call. So what happens when the dogs are unsupervised? In the daycare, is there some sort of kenneling that's separate and so on? Equally, if the dogs aren't supervised, so let's say you're employing a dog walker, how do you know that that dog walker is coming in at the time that has been agreed with you and walking for the time that's been agreed with you? Again, I've had awful instances myself, personal experience, where I have booked people years ago to come and look after my own pets and take them out, and actually my partner has been upstairs working away very quietly, and that person hasn't come at the time that they stated, and they haven't walked for the duration that was agreed, and they're being paid for. Thankfully nowadays there's gadgets and gizmos that can help with that. So things like Dog Monitor is a useful gizmo that you can download onto your smartphone or to your tablet, and it live streams what your dog is doing. You've also got other gadgets like trackers, GPS trackers that can monitor in your dog's collar the level of activity, so you can see during a 24-hour period roughly the time at which your dog walker or daycare are typically taking them out, and even nowadays you can track the route that they've gone as well and how many calories they've burnt off during that time. So we've talked about enrichment, we've talked about rest, we've talked about methodology and the ways in which they work, and the importance of understanding the education that the people working either at the dog walkers or the daycare are getting to ensure you're having the very best service for your pet. We also want to make sure that they are absolutely knowledgeable when it comes to dealing with an emergency. So while they may have, say, canine first aid certificate, what happens when a sitter is ill, when the dog walker is ill, or somebody at daycare is taken ill? What happens is if there's a fire. So we talked about fight protocols, but what about sickness protocols? What about evacuation? What about if your dog is poorly? Have you agreed with them the process that needs to be taken if your dog is ill? Will they give you a call first to get the authority to take your dog to the vet, or will they just take your dog to the vet and then call you? All of this is really important. Questions that should also be asked, which should be in a contract that you sign, would be things like your dog's veterinary details, their microchip number, whether they're insured, and so on. And equally, you want to understand whether the pet carer or dog walker has full insurance. So that's whether something happens out on a walk to your dog, to another dog, or they accidentally knock something over in your house and break a vase, for example, and so on. And you want to see how long that person has been established and the sort of recommendations they have or testimonials, be it on their website, on their Facebook page, or that they can give to you. Be wary of anyone that has lots of testimonials that seem to be their friends. The best advertising, I always think, are genuinely people who have had an experience and then can refer to somebody they just met in the park. Oh, I've used this person, it's great. I am really thankful to all of my clients because without you, I wouldn't have a business. So thank you, because it's down to your recommendations that keeps me going. So I really am so grateful. But genuinely, there's nothing better than asking for seeing these testimonials and maybe going onto social media and asking for recommendations. So make sure that you're really doing your homework with regards to who is recommending them as well. In daycare, some of the things that you want to be looking for when you go and visit are whether the dogs are naked, and that's something that a great trainer called Kathy Sadeo talks about. And basically what she means when she's saying naked is whether they have collars and harnesses on, because except for their arrival or departures at daycare, things like strangulations can occur, especially if they've got kennels or cages that are being used, or crates. For those times that the dogs are unsupervised, or even when dogs are playing, they can get themselves caught up paws in collars and so forth. Kathy Day also says if the staff tell you but we need to have the collars and harnesses on to break up fights, then I agree with her. Be concerned, because if they don't have a plan for a fight protocol, this would be a bit of a red flag to me that they're relying on collars and harnesses to pull a dog off, rather than actually having dogs split in ages or temperaments and sizes. In that daycare, it shouldn't be a free-for-all. And I have been to daycare as well. I have seen that, and it can be incredibly stressful for the animal and for those that are supervising as well. So you've talked about emergency plans, we've talked about whether dogs should be naked, we've talked about rest areas, but what I would also consider is whether those dogs have maximum freedom all the time, because having maximum freedom and minimum control, so what I mean by that is free reign of the house and the garden or the fields that may be on site at the daycare, isn't necessarily a good thing. Not all dogs want to be racing around 100% of the time. Some dogs don't cope very well in those situations. So for those dogs that are less comfortable, do they have opaque barriers or double barriers to ensure that dogs can't escape, or dogs that are less keen on that sort of high activity in play can have the chance to get away, get that downtime with not eyeballing other dogs as well. The other thing I would also just reiterate is what sort of foods they give them at daycare, whether you're being asked to provide the food or whether they give the dogs a diet, because there's all sorts of things like allergies that dogs will have just like us. You want to make sure that they're getting the right sort of nourishment during the day, and also you want to make sure that they're asking you for vaccinations and whether your dog's neutered or not. Very often male dogs over 6 months, many daycares won't take unneutered males, and also if a bitch is in heat, because it can cause little spats between the dogs, but also there's the risk of tying for pregnancy as well. They should obviously be talking to you about the policies if they're sick dogs, and who pays for medical treatment if there is some sort of injury on site or when out with your dog walker. And finally, don't be shy in asking if they've got security checks, so things like CBR checks, where you can be assured that if these people are coming into your home to collect your dog for daycare or coming into your home to walk your dog, that they have a clean bill, as it were, in terms of history, no criminal history. After all, this is your home, your property, your dog is your property, although he's much valued member of your family, but in the eyes of the law, a dog is a property. So you just want to make sure you're dotting all the I's and crossing all the T's, as it were. So I hope you found this webcast useful, some of the key elements that I would be looking for when choosing the right sort of pet carer for my own dogs. And if you have any questions, do get in touch at Hannah, HANNE, at doglistener.tv if you have any further questions. Thank you. Bye.